You were patient. You were understanding. You gave space when they needed it. You showed up consistently even when they couldn't. And then one day, you stopped. Not out of anger. Not out of manipulation. You just realized you were worth more than what they were capable of giving. And now they're noticing. But here's what most people don't understand. An avoidant doesn't realize what they've lost the moment you walk away. They realize it in stages, in fractures, in quiet moments of recognition that hit them long after you've already moved on. What are those moments? What actually breaks through the wall they've spent years building? And why does the loss of a certain type of woman create a panic in them that nothing else does? By the end of this, you'll understand the 5 specific signs that reveal when an avoidant has crossed the point of no return. When they've realized they didn't just lose someone who cared. They lost someone irreplaceable. And you'll understand why that realization doesn't come with grand gestures. It comes with something far more telling: silence, regret, and the slow unraveling of their own emotional defenses. Here's the part no one tells you. The avoidant doesn't lose everyone the same way. Most people who walk away from them are doing it from a place of exhaustion, frustration, or pain. They leave angry. They leave hurt. They leave hoping the avoidant will feel what they felt. And the avoidant can sense that. They can feel the emotional charge. The unfinished business, the door left slightly open. But a chosen woman doesn't leave like that. She doesn't leave to punish. She doesn't leave to be chased. She leaves because she's seen the pattern clearly, accepted it for what it is, and chosen herself without resentment. And that kind of departure is different. It's final. It's clean. And it's the one thing the avoidance nervous system can't rationalize away. Because the avoidance entire relational framework depends on one hidden dynamic. They need to be the one who controls the distance. They need to be the one who decides when to engage and when to retreat. They need to feel like they could come back if they wanted to. That optionality is their safety net. It's what allows them to maintain emotional detachment without feeling abandoned. But when a chosen woman walks away, she doesn't leave the door open. She doesn't leave breadcrumbs. She doesn't create a path back. And that absence of pursuit, that absence of emotional need, is what triggers the collapse. Because for the first time, they're not in control. They're not the ones deciding. And they can't undo what's already been closed. Sign 1. The delayed reaction. When you first pull away, there's nothing. No text, no call, no acknowledgement. And that silence feels like confirmation, doesn't it? Like proof that they never cared to begin with. But here's what's actually happening. They're not reacting because they don't believe it's real yet. Avoidants are conditioned to expect people to come back, to cool off and re-engage, to need closure or validation or one last conversation. So when you go quiet, they assume it's temporary. They assume you're hurt and you'll reach out once the emotion settles. They're waiting for you to follow the script. But then days turn into weeks, weeks turn into a month, and the silence doesn't break. That's when the delayed reaction begins. It's not dramatic. It's not a breakdown. It's a slow, creeping awareness that you're actually gone, and that awareness doesn't hit all at once. It builds. In small moments, when something reminds them of you, when they go to text you out of habit and stop themselves, when they realize no one else asks the questions you used to ask or sees them the way you used to see them. Externally, they still look fine, unbothered, moving forward. But internally, the absence is starting to register as a loss, not just of you, but of the version of themselves they were allowed to be around you. The version that didn't have to perform. The version that felt seen even when they couldn't admit they wanted to be. Sign 2, the comparison trap. They start seeing you in everyone else. Not literally, but energetically. They meet someone new, and within minutes, they're measuring her against you. She's interesting, but she doesn't get their humor the way you did. She's attractive, but there's no depth. She's available, but that availability feels empty instead of safe. And this is where the avoidance logic starts to crack. Because they've spent so long telling themselves that distance equals freedom, that detachment equals strength, that they don't need deep connection to be fulfilled. But now, every interaction with someone who isn't you exposes the lie. Connection isn't the threat. Shallow connection is. And you were never shallow. Externally, they might cycle through people faster. Dates that go nowhere. Conversations that feel hollow. Surface-level intimacy that leaves them feeling more alone than being alone did. But internally, they're starting to realize something they can't unlearn. You weren't replaceable. You weren't just someone who cared about them. You were someone rare. Someone whose presence made everything else feel like noise. And that realization doesn't come with relief. It comes with regret. Sign 3. The revisiting. They go back. Not to you, to the memories, to the conversations, to the moments they dismissed or took for granted when they were happening. They scroll through old messages. They remember things you said. They replay interactions they barely paid attention to at the time. And now, in your absence, those moments carry weight. This is the phase where the avoidant starts rewriting the narrative, not consciously, but emotionally. They start to see what they couldn't see before, that your patience wasn't weakness, your consistency wasn't neediness. Your willingness to show up wasn't desperation, it was strength. It was choice. And they mistook it for something they could always come back to. Externally, this might look like nostalgia. A random like on an old photo. A vague post that feels aimed at you even if your name isn't mentioned. But internally, it's something deeper. It's the beginning of accountability. The slow, uncomfortable recognition that they didn't lose you because you weren't enough. They lost you because they weren't ready. And now you're gone, and ready doesn't matter anymore. Sign 4. The identity crisis. The avoidant starts questioning themselves in ways they never have before. They've built their entire sense of self around independence. Around not needing anyone. Around being fine alone. But your absence is exposing the flaw in that identity. They're fine alone. But they're not fulfilled. They're independent. But they're isolated. They're self-sufficient. But they're not happy. And that dissonance creates a crisis. Because if the entire framework they built to protect themselves is also the thing keeping them from the connection they actually want, then what was the point? If pushing away the one person who saw them clearly was self-sabotage disguised as self-protection, then who are they really? Externally, this might show up as changes in behavior. They might start therapy. They might pull back from their usual patterns. They might become quieter, more introspective, more withdrawn, even from the distractions they usually lean on. But internally, they're deconstructing. They're facing the part of themselves they've avoided for years, the part that's terrified of intimacy, not because intimacy is dangerous, but because they don't believe they're worthy of it. And you were the mirror that reflected that wound. And instead of facing it, they pushed the mirror away. And now the mirror is gone, and the wound is still there. Sign 5, the irreversible knowing. This is the final sign. The point of no return. It's not a moment, it's a state. It's when the avoidant fully understands that they didn't just lose a relationship. They lost a person they'll spend the rest of their life measuring others against. A person who set a standard they'll never find again because the standard wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. It was about someone who loved them enough to let them go when staying became self-betrayal. And that kind of love doesn't come twice. That kind of clarity doesn't circle back. That kind of woman doesn't wait around to be chosen later when she's already chosen herself now. Externally, this might look like acceptance, like moving on, like building a new life. But internally, there's a permanent awareness, a knowing, that they had something rare and they let it slip through their fingers. Not because they didn't care, but because they cared in the only way they knew how. And it wasn't enough. Here's what most people do when they walk away from an avoidant. They wait. They hope. They check to see if the avoidant noticed, if the avoidant regrets it, if the avoidant finally gets it, and that waiting keeps them tethered. It keeps them emotionally invested in an outcome they can't control. But what actually creates power is this. You walk away and you don't look back. Not because you're being cold, but because you're being honest. You're not waiting for them to realize your value. You already know it. And that knowing is what makes you unchosen by them and irreplaceable to them at the same time. Because the chosen woman doesn't need the avoidant to collapse for her to feel validated. She doesn't need their regret to confirm her worth. She doesn't need their awakening to justify her decision. She walked away whole. And that wholeness is what haunts them. Principle 1. Stop tracking their awareness. Whether they realize what they lost or not isn't your concern anymore. Your concern is what you're building in the space they used to occupy. Every moment you spend wondering if they get it now is a moment you're still giving them access to your emotional energy. Cut that cord, not with anger, with clarity. Principle 2. Don't mistake their regret for readiness. If they come back, if they reach out, if they finally say the things you wanted to hear months ago, understand this. Regret doesn't equal growth. Panic doesn't equal change. Someone can miss you deeply and still not be capable of meeting you. Don't confuse their pain with their progress. Principle 3. Protect the closure you've already created. You don't owe them a conversation. You don't owe them another chance to explain. You don't owe them access to your peace just because they've finally woken up. Closure isn't something they give you. It's something you give yourself. And you've already given it. Principle 4. Recognize that being irreplaceable to them doesn't mean you belong with them. They can know you were the one and still not be ready to do the work. They can carry the weight of losing you for years and still repeat the same patterns with someone else. Their recognition of your value doesn't obligate you to return. Principle 5. Reclaim your narrative. You're not the woman who got left. You're the woman who left. You're not the one who wasn't chosen. You're the one who chose herself. And that reframe isn't semantic, it's structural. It's the difference between carrying the loss as rejection and carrying it as reclamation. This isn't about revenge. It's not about making them suffer. It's not about proving a point. It's about understanding that your worth was never up for debate. You didn't lose value when they couldn't see it. They lost access when you stopped offering it. You don't wait for their realization. You build your life. You don't need their regret. You need your own respect. You don't wonder if they know what they lost. You know what you've gained by walking away. You don't react. You evolve. You don't return. You rise. You don't seek their validation. You embody your own. And the woman who can do that isn't just irreplaceable to the avoidant who lost her. She's irreplaceable to herself. And that's the only replacement that matters. So here's the question. What would your life look like if you stopped waiting for them to see you and started seeing yourself the way you deserved to be seen all along? Because the point of no return isn't when they realize they lost you. It's when you realize you never needed them to find you in the first place.